Welcome to the No Switch Fitness Podcast, where we aim to combine education and anecdotal experience that will allow you to take no off switch in the pursuit of results. Let's jump into today's episode with host Luke Miller and the newest addition to the No Switch team, Coach Braeden Kardash.
All right, guys, welcome to the No Switch Fitness Podcast. And today I've got a really awesome guest with me. Really excited to have you on, Braeden Kardash from Canada. And the reason I'm excited is because we're going to be bringing Braden on to the team at No Switch Fitness as a coach. You guys may recognize him from some of the shows this year. We did Canadian Nationals, won the overall at Legends. Then we did Canadian Nationals. And then he extended his prep to the Amateur O. In the mix at both shows, did really well. Coaches himself. He coaches a crew of athletes, and really excited to bring him on because I think there's just going to be a dynamic that's going to be brought with you, Braden, that's going to be able to really resonate with those people that are in that active competing space, and like you're kind of living that in the trenches day in, day out, and carrying that into your coaching. And I think that's something that'll be really valuable to share with our audience. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself, Braden. Like, where you're from, what do you do? Like, what makes up Braeden Kardash, the classic competitor?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm happy to be here. I'm super excited and be down here in Dallas. It's been such a cool week, and I'm just excited to get rolling and get started with the team. And a little bit about me, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, actually, so on the west coast or west side of Alberta, Canada, and moved to Toronto still when I was quite young, and then just been living in Toronto pretty much my entire life, and in and around Toronto, the surrounding cities there.
Yeah.
Grew up playing golf.
Yeah,
believe it or not. Yeah. So not really into bodybuilding at that time. So golf was like my first true passion, and golf and cars were like that was my jam growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you've got an M3 now that's your baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have my BMW M3. And I have a couple other toys too. So I had an Audi S4, I have my Porsche Cayenne Turbo, and then a BMW 135. So if anyone's watching or listening that knows cars, they'll know that they're fun cars to have. So definitely I enjoy my cars, and that was kind of my second passion. And then down the road, I've landed into bodybuilding, and I'm obsessed. So.
And I know the audience members are going to, for those who know you, are going to ask the question, so we might as well answer it for them of like, what's it like getting to train at Pure every day, and like the little playground that you have, and how that's been beneficial to your bodybuilding experience and all of that?
It's honestly, I get spoiled. Honestly, I feel spoiled training there. Initially, the equipment and just the facility there, it's so like just top notch, and even the crew there, like Dorian and those guys, it's just being around the pros and stuff like that. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the facility itself, it's such a treat. And then when I travel or I train at other gyms, it's almost like it's nothing really compares to it, to be honest. But yeah, it's definitely pretty surreal being there and training, like I said, around all the pros and the equipment that they have there. It's just, there's nothing better.
Yeah. And I think just kind of transitioning into our topic, it's like environments that you put yourself into are kind of important for the development of yourself, not only as an athlete, but as a coach. And one of the things you kind of really noted about this year was just when I was there at the Amateur Olympia, kind of how that whole peaking process went with me there, but not only me there, me for Canadian Nationals, communicating everything over the phone, and how that was different, and you felt like it was more predictable. And I think this is something I want to dive into for a topic perspective, because I've heard you bring this up more than once in conversations we've had with people, just like casually hanging out or talking to other people in the industry. Like, what was it that made you feel like that's such a game changer in the athlete management side of it from a predictability standpoint, or whatever you feel like stands out with that process? Yeah,
so, I've been pretty fortunate to work with some pretty notable and some top quality coaches, notably, Team HD, as well as Patrick Tour. So I've worked with some very, top quality coaches. And, with the process that we went through and the that whole peaking process through Legends and Canadian Nationals and Olympia, it was the calculated decisions and having those calculated decisions and basically planning out and having everything just, like I said, calculated before we went into peak week. So being prepared and you can probably expand on some of that, but it was, dialing in my weight, knowing what we look the best at which weight, knowing how much food we had, either the day prior and the morning of, we hit that weight, what that weight looks like, and how does that translate when I'm posing, right?
Yeah.
And having that sort of calculated ahead of time, and then going into peak week, we knew exactly what we had to do.
Yeah.
And it gave me a sense of calmness and confidence too, going on stage. Right. So,
yeah, I think like one of the big aspects of like bringing you on and like what I kind of see in you is like a very good communicator and someone who's able to lay out what they're thinking about in a fairly succinct manner that's digestible and easy for the client to understand ultimately, or like for us to have a conversation around. And that's kind of the portion of this process that I feel like you felt like was a lot different, was laying out like, look, we're doing this because of XYZ. But I think that dynamic kind of came to fruition between you and I by allowing that relationship to be kind of equals instead of like top down. Like, yeah, I was making the decision making, and we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of it in a bit, but like you came to me with previous data, just based on your experience about like not pulling growth hormone and like kind of how that allows you to kind of stay a little bit fuller. Some of your comments on like fluid manipulation, asking good questions about how I was kind of looking to do that, and being able to share that and just kind of dive into how that communication process felt on your end, and like why you think that's such an important aspect of coach to athlete relationships, because I feel like that's just going to be something as a coach you already do and are going to be able to pull out a lot with the athletes you work with.
Yeah. So you touched on a few things, and I think you said I asked the right questions, but to be honest, going through your processes, you asked a lot of questions from me, right?
Yeah.
And it pulled that information from me, right? And I'm pretty observative, like when I see that, and I think through this whole process and our whole prep, it was you asked the right questions to pluck the right information for me, and then I just I added to that where I felt necessary, right? And I think that comes from experience. I've done close to 10 shows, 10 plus shows now, right? So I've been through a few preps, and like you said, I did give you some quality kind of feedback and some previous kind of workarounds, or not necessarily workarounds, but some things that I've done in the past that have worked. So I think that definitely translated, as we got closer to the show, you kind of knew which strings to pull or not to pull, in that sense. So definitely communication is huge, but I think asking the right questions from a coaching side as well as a client side, it definitely is important.
Yeah, and for like those of you guys listening, like I think one thing that limits coaches from being able to do that is an ego thing, right? They have to feel like they're always the one that's right, or they're always the one that's coming up with a solution. When in reality, that's why I talk about like the equal partnership between coach and client, because someone who has now 10 shows under the belt, or 10 plus shows, so coming into this process doing 7, like there's valuable information there that about yourself. Like I'm not walking in your shoes every day. There's stuff that you can add to that process that I can take in and process for whatever I think that gets end up going to be. And it might not look exactly like the way you present it, but I know how that's now going to influence the decision making at the end of the day, and then communicate that logic to you. Because then even if I do change something relative to what you told me, I have a logical explanation as to why. And I think that dynamic is so important when it comes to landing peaks well with athletes that are experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's huge. And I also think with new coach, that coach to client relationship for new coaches, a new relationship.
Yeah.
I hear a lot that, and I've heard a lot in the industry where it's like, oh, well, it's our first show, so we'll get it right the next time. Right. But I think, having that good communication and asking the right questions, you're eliminating that. And then, tie that in with your, strategies and methods that we use for peaking. I think it's just, there's no excuse really for not nailing it the first few shows, right? So
there's not, because like ideally you run the prep timeline where you get an opportunity to test some things before you're heading into peak week. Fluid and sodium manipulation is kind of built around just driving the physique to the number that we like and the visual that we like. And then at the end of the day, the hardest part is just getting all the fat off to be ready. And if you do that and do that in time, that's where like these peaks become really smooth. Now, we probably should talk a little bit about how much food it took the first time and potentially why, because we have Team Rice Krispie over here, and we had a lot of comments at the Amateur O about why you weren't eating Rice Krispies versus the first time, and just kind of that dynamic about like that prep was a little bit shorter than we wanted it to be, and just how it seemed to be a little bit more responsive with the Amateur O, and kind of like from your side what that felt like.
Yeah, so that first prep, like you said, we had a little bit of a shorter time frame. We were really coming down, because we had to get down to 197. So initially that was our goal weight, or our target, because that was the cap at 197. After going through what that looks like and my height based on the cap for my division, we were able to get into that upper weight class, which is 205 in Class C, because I'm right on that borderline, right? So that gave us a little bump, but we were really grinding down pretty hard. And I think coming into those last few weeks, we had to almost pick me up out of a hole, right? And that's why we had to, really step on the food, with the short acting carbs and the quick Rice Krispie squares. Like, I think I went through 26 Rice Krispie squares in less than, about 24 hours. Just over 24 hours.
Just over 24 hours, probably like 36, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because like that peak looked way different than the Amateur O, where that was probably a little bit more ideal in that I started that loading process about eight or 9 days out, right? And just kind of kept drip feeding you food all the way up until show day, just kept you right below the cap. And we ended up like, once the fatigue dropped, your best look was right under the cap, right? We thought it was going to be right over, but the fatigue drop kind of showed us that it would be a little bit lower. And all that to kind of like bring it back to the backstage management side of, when you do it this way and you make it predictable in that fluid and sodium and food amounts can drive a weight up a certain percentage or down a certain percentage relative to what that athlete responds to, you can have that athlete backstage who's nervous about a time delay or a change in the schedule or something along those lines that we had to deal with the Amateur O, and be like, look, just get on the scale. You're going to walk on stage in 30 minutes. Step on it. Let me see where you're at. We'll do whatever we need to do, but I guarantee you're right on the money. Because, like, as an athlete, I know what's going through your head. You're like, oh, he's just telling me I look good because he wants me to know that I'm confident and look good. It's like, what do I actually look like? And I know, like, no matter how much you trust your coach, that thought's always in the back of an athlete's head. So as coaches, we should be having strategies that help mitigate that.
No, exactly. And the thing is, every single athlete and competitor out there can relate to that, because how many shows run on time? Shows are always delayed. At least in Canada, we have our shows, they're always delayed because, a certain class is extra large. There's more competitors. The times get pushed back. You think you're going on at 10 o'clock. You don't get on until 11 or 11:30, right? So I think everyone can relate to that. Yes, we had a pretty sudden delay where they really, they pushed us back. They're going to say, okay, an hour and a half intermission. But I think, everyone can relate to that. And just having that calculated decision, knowing that this is the number we look good at, stick to our guns. We stepped on the scale. We knew we were right there. No need to panic, right? And that gave me a sense of calmness. And I think, going forward, it's such a crucial piece, to that peaking process, just having that, confidence and calmness and having everything calculated out. So,
yeah, I think when we talk about it, like the question that gets brought up is like, oh, you carry a scale backstage with you? It's like, bro, how hard is it to put a scale in your backpack and just like hop on it every once in a while when you do your pictures? It's not like you're doing this every 30 minutes, right? You're like checking things every couple hours and just making sure things are moving in the right direction. And it's like the people, and this is going to sound a little crude, but the people who aren't willing to do that kind of stuff tells me that they truly don't want to put everything into bringing the best look to stage, which is kind of where you start to see some of that personality come out of like how much competing actually means to the athlete. It's such a simple task. Like, you just put the scale in your backpack and you move on. But
I think it's, Luke, I think it's more so that people don't know what that look and that number translate. I don't think they, a coach to client, I don't think they know what that number is for a lot of their clients.
Yeah. They're like kind of doing it off a feel and just like based off like last pictures, and they're not like running a calculated decision process of moving people up and down in percentages because.
And I think that's fine for an experienced coach, but how does that translate for a client, right? Yeah. Does that client have that same confidence?
No, it doesn't. No. And that's where like, I think you kind of hung on to this because I saw a big shift in your thought process of peaking just from like the first show to like that, like once you've been through it once and then you went through it twice and then you went through it for a third time. Like for someone who's not very data driven, it can be a little bit intimidating to run a peak based off a look at a certain number because a lot of bodybuilding's feel based for some people. Like, oh, the pump feels amazing. They're like quoting Arnold about like how good their pumps feel, right? But it makes it predictable, and there's a calmness with predictability that allows that athlete to focus on the things that matter on stage, which is presentation, making sure that we're, being aware of where we're at on stage and presenting ourselves in a way that's going to allow us to be competitive instead of worrying about, oh shit, do I look good? Do I look bad? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone backstage, you've heard this. Hey bro, like, am I flat? Should I eat something? Should I have some rice cakes and jam and peanut butter? Like, am I flat? So I think everyone has heard that backstage, and probably everyone who's competed at least 2 or 3 times has done that. Yeah. I've done it.
Yeah.
Right.
You're in the bathroom mirror. Like, God, the amount of times you walked into that fucking bathroom at the Amateur O, I was like about to chain you to the couch because you were like just constantly wanting to go in there and check. But it's normal, right? You put everything into it, and you have to realize, like, as a coach, you may be capable of running a peak without it, and that's fine. At least have the system in play for the calmness of the athlete, because coaching is not just about, like, it's not just about what you're capable of, it's what you're capable of pulling out of the athlete, and that's a dynamic that I feel like is missed a lot of times, is the way we manage ourselves and the way we handle ourselves represents in how our athlete handles themselves and are able to carry themselves on stage. Like and this comes a lot to like emotional reactivity and being able to build in those systems. It's like, it's not only having the system that communicates to the client, hey, we're where we need to be. It's also how you react to when you first look at them taking their clothes off, or what does your reaction from the time duration from where they're at to on stage look like? Like, once you've gone through this process enough, you should know, 1, how to land someone without really making too many mistakes, but 2, also how to fix it if stuff does go awry, because like we found out at the Amateur O, you were literally getting glaze on about to walk on stage and they called the intermission.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's huge, from a coaching perspective, when, if you're with your clients in person, your body language, do you have really real highs and do you have really real lows, right?
Yeah.
You got to be the leader, right? And I think that translates also, to your clients. And I think you do a really good job of that, because you don't show, a ton of emotion. You're pretty calculated with all your decisions and, how you go about, that show day and the day before, right?
Yeah.
It's no, maybe we should try this, or, I think this. No, it's okay. This is what we're doing. We've done it before. We know the plan. Let's execute. And, you're steering the ship, right? So it's like, that's huge. And as you said, just having that, pulling the best out of that athlete. In my opinion, it's making sure that athlete is confident, because the work's already done, right? So,
yeah. And I think, and this is to kind of further this topic and this thought process, is, the coach into the athlete development side is like one of the things I really like about you coming on board is how well you present yourself on stage and kind of that stage demeanor and all of this, and like where that looks to be a portion of that development with your athletes, because I know it's a value add that you'll really enjoy with your clients, and like how important you feel that is, because we worked on some posing stuff before you, like picking the right classic pose and deciding how to hit the front double and a couple other situations, how to hit the side chest. You're going back and forth between like the crunch down abs versus the pull it up there for a bit. So it's like that experience on your end and bringing that, and like how that's going to be a value add for the people you work with as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about, and I've been fortunate enough, like I said, we're training at Pure Muscle, and working with some of the pros there. So Antoine is an IFBB pro up in Canada. He's the posing coach at Pure Muscle, and he works with a lot of the athletes out of Pure Muscle. So I've learned a ton from him, and I'm happy to be able to now translate that to my clients also, right? And it's, posing in itself, when you talk about posing, it's not just, okay, can you hit a front double? It's your poise on stage. It's your confidence. It's having that almost swagger, especially in classic physique. It's getting so important right now. And men's physique, right? To have that poise and just really present yourself well on stage.
Yeah, and also kind of like the experiences you're gathering as an athlete. Like the Amateur Olympia was the first time you left Canada to compete, right?
Yeah.
And like that difference in presenting yourself on a stage here in the States sometimes versus Canada, it's a little bit different.
It is different. And, I've learned from competing now on the MPC stage that guys are going to get a little more aggressive. And, I think of everything that I go through as a competitor and as an athlete. Now this is just building, myself. I'm building that so I can help my clients and also, myself as an athlete. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, man, I think you're going to be a huge value add for the team. I'm really excited to have you on. But before we kind of wrap this up, is there anything about that backstage process that we didn't cover that you felt was a huge aspect of that coach to client relationship that you feel is important for the listeners to understand, especially for the portion of our audience that is coaches? We have a lot of coaches that listen to the podcast and the YouTube page. So just any value that you feel like we missed within that process that you feel was pretty game changing for you?
We pretty much touched on a lot of it. I think, like we said, the main point was just having, getting your pulling the best out of your athlete and you're pulling the best out of your athlete for show day. Having the process in place, concise decisions, making sure that that they're confident, and obviously you also give that confidence back to them, right? So that's the main takeaway for me from the Olympia and working with you. But I mean, there's so many little things also that go into it, from the tan, right, to you were carrying around my bag on show day. And I'm not saying that all coaches are going to have to carry around your client's bag, but it's those little extra things that make the client feel like, okay, he's behind me 100%,
Yeah.
So
especially with the tan for you, because that in the past has been a little bit of a tough thing to nail, but it was, we got it down pat for the amateur, that's for sure.
Yeah, by far. That was the best tan I've had by far. So
some of the audience is not going to know you, so they're going to want to know where to find you. So Instagram and YouTube, where can they find you and all that fun jazz? And obviously you'll be doing stuff on the No Switch platforms, like we'll be doing lives with the No Switch Fitness on Instagram, and then we'll also do some YouTube stuff as well for them to kind of find that out. We have some fun series coming out that we'll wait to announce until that starts to come out. Braden's going to be adding a lot of value to you guys as one of his inaugural things that he's going to be launching within the brand. So I'm really excited for that. That's going to be a really huge value add for you guys. But where can they find you? Instagram, YouTube, all that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is just Braeden Kardash, pretty basic. Same thing with my YouTube, so pretty straightforward. But yeah, I'm definitely looking to grow my YouTube and just put out as much content, quality content as I can. And as I, start working closer with No Switch and with you, Luke, I know that it's going to be a game changer. Lots of really good content coming out, and I'm just excited to get the ball rolling with that. And yeah.
Yeah. And we're really excited, and I think that kind of wraps it for today. So make sure you guys, if you need to know anything else, we'll be doing later podcasts about the details of sodium fluid food manipulation within the peak week. This is more kind of about that athlete to coach dynamic that I wanted to cover today. But make sure, if you have any questions, this will be going on YouTube, so put it in the comments below. Like and subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and until next time, take no off switch in the pursuit of results.